Hello, my name is Karrington. Today I'm going to talk about standardized admissions tests, or also known as SATs and ACTs. So first I want to ask a question. How many of you guys took the ACT or SAT? How many of you guys took it more than once? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So my proposition is that standardized admission tests for colleges are significantly flawed. So to start off, my first claim is that SATs and ACTs are insignificant in providing accurate prediction for the performance of aspiring college students, because that's what it's made to do. It's supposed to be kind of like a GPA, but more of like a snapshot of how you do for college. So according to Pearson.ed, there's only a 5% difference in the GPA of students who took the test and those who didn't. So this is a small, it's a small difference that is nearly significant. It shows that the SAT and ACT do not have a big teller in how you'll do in the future versus how your GPA will tell. So some students are bad test takers. So especially with a test that's supposed to determine your entry or denial at a college of your preference, anxiety will be normally higher than it would if it was just like a regular simple test that didn't affect your future. So there was a study conducted at a high school that recorded students who reported themselves to have higher test anxiety. So 40% of students had test anxiety at one point or another, and 38% of students reported themselves to have test anxiety all the time. And then the remaining percent reported themselves to not have any test anxiety issues at all. And then these tests are biased, and it has been known historically that these tests are racially, socioeconomic-wise, and gender-wisely based. So on average, historically, white people and Asian people tend to do better than those who are Black and Hispanic. And then also, wealthier children do better than those who are poor and from less affluent areas. And then for my second point, I wanted to mention that high school grades provide a more accurate indicator of how future college students will do and perform in the future at higher education institutions. So students with mediocre testing and good grades have reported to perform better at colleges than students who have lower grades and had higher test scores. So this is evident in a study that Matthew Chingos did at an Urban Institute, from the Urban Institute. He conducted a study to determine the six-year college graduation rates by high school GPA, SAT, and ACT scores. So it shows the relationship between college graduation and GPA scores, and then also graduation with SAT scores, and then college graduation with ACT scores. And the relationship between GPA and college graduation was higher than those of the relationships with SATs and SAT scores, which shows that GPA is significantly more, a better prediction of how students will do in college than these admission tests. And then lastly, these tests place unnecessary worry and stress on students. These tests cost money, and not everybody has the cost to front that. So fretting about financial problems will take away from students' performance on these tests by worrying about the costs and whatnot for the test. And then also a large amount of weight is put onto these admission tests because coupled with the GPA, they're supposed to determine your acceptance into certain schools. And the students may put less effort and time into schoolwork that will contribute to their GPA when trying to study for these SATs and ACTs, which can cause a slip in their grades. And in conclusion, this is supposed to show that SATs and ACTs are significantly flawed.
All right, the proposition is very clearly indicated. There's no preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, so we're missing that roadmap that we want you to have at the beginning of a speech like this. You won't always be road mapping everything that you talk about, but in this situation, I think it would have helped a little bit more. You go right into your first point. That is clearly signposted, so the body of the speech, the individual points, they are clearly structured. So you've got a structure, you just want to set it up for us at the beginning of the presentation. On the first point, you talk about people who are sometimes bad test takers. There's not much proof on that. You did have some evidence, some statistical evidence that showed that there's not a significant difference between people who take the test and people who simply go by GPA when we're talking about those differences. I thought that was very good information. I'm not sure how that it fit in with the same information that you're presenting here. The stuff about them being bad test takers, for instance, that seemed like it fit into one of the other categories that you'd want to be talking about, especially that third point. That, I think, would fit better there. Then there's an argument about the test being biased, and you mentioned several kinds of criteria on which it's biased, but I didn't hear any source citation on that, and there's no evidence that's presented. This is taken as a given. This is a presupposition without any proof. There is, I think there's proof on this sort of thing. I think I've seen evidence on these sorts of things, but you've got to treat the audience as if they don't know the information, and I bet some of these folks haven't seen any information like that. I'm not the only, there are other people in the classrooms that are going to need that kind of proof for them to believe what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're just making a conclusionary statement. The second point, like I said, I thought that's where your first piece of evidence on the grading probably fit best, and then you've got a later study. You've got another study that you do cite that suggests that there's not really a strong difference, and in fact, students who we judged by the GPA, they had a higher rate of consistency than students that were being judged by the SAT. I thought that was nicely explained, and that helps prove your point on the second point, so your proof there is a little bit better. And then the stuff about unnecessary stress and worry, that's where I think you needed to put the evidence that you had on test-taking anxiety issues. That probably fits better in that category than it did in the place that you had it before. And then there's a little bit of discussion of cost and the weight that's put on the test, but I didn't really, again, hear much evidence on that. I don't know how important the test is to people getting into college. I don't know that all the colleges and universities utilize them. The notion that there's some stress related to it, I think all test taking is probably stressful for people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should forego having the tests. There might be some other way that we can do those things. You need a little bit more information on that point. I think you do a nice job speaking to the audience, maybe a little more reading than you want to do, but you project well, and like I said, it's nicely organized. You've got some good data. I think you need more, and especially on that first point. All right, thank you.